What was the urgency of creating a new federal level security force, although it was converted from FC into a federal security force? But what was the urgency?
If any law enforcement agency should be coming in aid or further augmenting a provincial law enforcement agency, then this should be it, rather than always invoking the assistance of the armed forces.
In future, is there any plan to bring massive reforms within the police structure of Pakistan?
We have been actively engaged in reforms, and we've been carrying them out. But like you said, police reforms, we can only do them at the federal level, and only to the extent of where our jurisdiction expands.
Delivery of justice is always an important priority of the government.
The idea behind 26th Amendment, I'll begin from that, of course, was to ease out the difficulties of the normal litigants, or appellants rather, people waiting for years or year on year for their appeal to be listed.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello and welcome to Program Insight in V News English. Dear viewers, recently federal government of Pakistan has taken a very important decision that existing frontier constabulary has been converted into a full-fledged force. That force will be called now a Federal Security Force. The name of the force will remain as FC. And as hinted by Minister of State for Interior and a number of other officials, this new force will be applicable across Pakistan and will be used to maintain law and order situation. So definitely behind creating a force and converting force into a federal force that need a legal backing. So since Parliament was not in session, a presidential ordinance was promulgated 2 days back. And that presidential ordinance gave a legal power to this force as a federal security force. In today's conversation, we would like to know what was the rationale behind creating this federal force in the presence of there are so many other paramilitary forces. What was the need to convert FC into a federal security force? And in addition to this, we will also discuss that what's the future legislation agenda of the present government? How is the working relationship within few parties within this ruling coalition, and governance, justice, and legal reforms, about which this present ruling coalition has been talking since long, that the legal reforms, justice reforms, governance reforms will be completed. Only 3 days ago, Pakistani Prime Minister has chaired a meeting in which he emphasized that governance reforms must be completed. So in today's conversation, we will also touch this, and we are fortunate to have with us Minister of State for Law and Justice, Barrister Aqeel Malik sir. Barrister Aqeel Malik, very warm welcome to Program Insight in V News English.
Thank you very much, Mateen sir. Thank you for having me.
So we will start with this, with the creation of new security force. And as I mentioned that since Parliament was not in session, an ordinance was promulgated. I would like to know what was the urgency of creating a new federal level security force, although it was converted from FC into a federal security force. But what was the urgency? There are so many other security agencies, intelligence agencies, paramilitary forces, rangers.
This act was actually, of course, it has been promulgated through an ordinance because the Parliament, both the Houses of the Parliament were not in session, and this was done over the weekend. Of course, the changing dynamics of the law and order situation, as well as the evolving situation on the counterterrorism, and of course, seeking a better coordination between various arms of law enforcement agencies, and of course, FC had not been that active as it had been in the past. So of course, trying to reorganize FC as well, and I think like you've mentioned in your opening as well, that the Minister for Interior and Narcotic Control, State Minister for Interior and Narcotic Control, had actually shed some light on it through his presser. What had basically been done by way of promulgation of this ordinance, that a slight reorganization of the agency itself has been envisaged and has now been translated. Of course, the areas that it deals with is not just counterterrorism, internal security, riot control, protection, escort role, and never as just a political policing unit. Of course, these are new areas that we can now see that have been included in the mandate of this within the reorganization of this federal constabulary force now, which used to be Frontier Constabulary Force. Of course, this was when it was initially formed. It was in 1915, and at that time, obviously, it was during the colonial era. Of course, with the passage of time, a lot of things have evolved, and a lot of dynamics have changed over a period of time, whether that's related to internal security, counterterrorism, or various issues that persist in terms of the security or within the counterterrorism realm. So, of course, this is what's been ensured, and not just, of course, the apparatus that exists at this point in time. That will continue, and that will systematically continue. We will see a continuation of that with the existing staff or the force that it comprises of. However, within that, it has now been divided into two different divisions. So the first division, of course, is the Security Division, and the other one being the Federal Reserve Division. Now, of course, with the Federal Reserve Division, this will now be a multi-ethnic and national force. So, of course, it won't just be limited to employment or force belonging to just one particular province, because now that it's actually a federal force, it will now ensure employment and inclusion and cohesion from the entire nations, whether that's Punjab, whether that's Pakhtunkhwa, KPK, or Balochistan, or Sindh, or AJK, or Gilgit-Baltistan, or even Islamabad, actually, the federal territory. So, of course, it will ensure a representation of individuals from within the force from all corners of the entire country. So it will actually ensure that. Now, aside from that, it has the powers have also been sort of reorganized or perhaps within the powers, what includes, of course, applicability of the Criminal Procedure Code, applicability of the Anti-Terrorism Act, and certain other powers within the related laws of the Police Order of 2002. So this will now obviously ensure that there is a national cohesion, and with the division of both the two divisions, whether that's the Federal Reserve Division or the Security Division, you will definitely see that now this will be a bolstered force that will be well equipped, that will further augment the provincial law enforcement agencies in addition to their own capacity. Because obviously, with the changing dynamics of national security and counterterrorism, we've seen with the evolving situation, or the ever-evolving situation rather, that it is now the need of hour so as to ensure a coordinated, a well-thought response, as well as having better coordination, which is streamlined through coordination amongst all the law enforcement agencies. And if any law enforcement agency should be coming in aid or further augmenting a provincial law enforcement agency, then this should be it, rather than always invoking the assistance of the armed forces.
Barrister Sahab, any plan to table this ordinance before Parliament for formal legislation to make it a formal act of Parliament in the near future?
Yes, absolutely, because the entire concept of an ordinance is that when the session is not in when the parliament is not in session, rather. So whether that's the Senate or the National Assembly. So of course, an ordinance is promulgated, which only has a life of 90 days and then extendable for another 90 days, so a maximum of 6 months. It's only a law for a period of 6 months, and of course, this will be presented before the Parliament. I'm not too sure whether this will be presented before the Senate first or the National Assembly. My understanding is that this will be presented before the National Assembly when it's in session next month, and then of course it will then go to the Senate after deliberations that have taken place within the relevant committees as well. And until then, it will function. Of course, the law obviously stands with a life of 3 months and then extendable for another 3 months. However, when the ordinance is presented, of course, the work will continue. And now that the government has, simple majority on the basis of its allies and with the support of its allies, we will definitely ensure that this passes through the relevant legislative stages.
So over last almost 15, 16 months since this government is in power, there have been series of meetings chaired by Prime Minister on law and order situation, on dealing with counter-terrorism. And it has been emphasized always that police should be made more stronger. So in future, is there any plan to bring reforms, legal reforms within the police structure so that it could not only effectively deal with counter-terrorism, it should also be answerable to some body, like in the past there were National Safety Commissions and Police Order of 2002. So in future, since you are part of the legal team of the government, any work is being considered or it is being examined to bring reforms in the police structure?
Mateen sir, we can only actually bring reforms at the federal level because obviously, like you mentioned, a law and order situation or law and order generally is a provincial subject. So of course, when that being a provincial subject, like you've seen, there's been two various forces that have been created in Punjab, just by way of an example, if I could give you, which is the Pera force and as well as the other, I think it's the crime force that has now been obviously created by the province of Punjab in curbing the street crime, in addressing various issues that had been there, whether that's related to traffic, whether that's street crime, whether that's generally ensuring law and safety and security situation of the citizens, or just general patrolling or related to traffic violations, or ensuring mechanisms or issues pertaining to the traffic violations. Now, having said that, province of Punjab has done it. We can only, as the federal government, we can only ensure reforms within the federal institutes or those that are subjects that are concurrent, of course, and we can speak to the provinces on that. Just like you know, with the FC, or whether that if it pertains to the Islamabad Police or the Rangers or FIA or various other law enforcement agencies, then we can certainly partake in reforming those. And the Prime Minister has been very actively involved and heading and chairing the Legal Reforms Committee as well. So, of course, it's not just the legal reforms. We've also had committees on tax reforms. We've also had committees on various other reforms in various other sectors. And we are fixed on the idea of reforms, not just for the sake of calling them reforms, but actually translating them into real, real-time changes that we've seen at various departments, whether that's the FPR, whether that's various other departments that we have worked on. So, of course, we have been actively engaged in reforms, and we've been carrying them out. But like you said, police reforms, we can only do them at the federal level, and only to the extent of where our jurisdiction expands, and not beyond that. Of course, those subjects that are provincial subjects, provinces understand that they have their own dynamics and their own needs and their own mechanisms to deal with such things, and that's what they have been doing.
So the present government has been talking about reforms in justice. I mean, to make justice affordable and it could be delivered speedily. In the past, certain measures and decisions have also been taken, and these measures were announced by Prime Minister Mr. Shahbaz Sharif. So, still, this particular area, this justice sector, there has to be certain reforms so that justice could be affordable and it could be speedy. So, any work is being done on this sector because providing justice is always a key priority of the government. Justice, rule of law, as you have already talked about it, dealing with law and order, but delivery of justice is always an important priority of the government. So please put some light on this sector.
Absolutely. We've actually worked on legal reforms. Of course, you've seen that the idea behind 26th Amendment, I'll begin from that, of course, was to ease out the difficulties of the normal litigants or appellants, rather, people waiting for years or year on year for their appeal to be listed for hearing or to be taken up for a hearing. So hence, we obviously ensured that a lot of these cases dealt with were either political cases or were of political nature, or those that deal solely on the fundamental rights or invoking of one or two or several fundamental rights. So we've then obviously ensured that those are heard by the constitutional bench, which obviously is separate from the normal working of the court, where the appeals, whether that's a family appeal, whether that's an appeal that pertains to a corporate or commercial case, whether that's appeal that pertains to criminal law cases. Of course, you've seen examples before you that people have been waiting for 15 or 20 years and even 25 years in some cases, where their appeal is then heard at Supreme Court level after a lapse of 20, 25 years. And then they realize with the evidence that's present before the honorable judges that, this is a case that should have been acquitted, or the person who has been convicted should have been acquitted in that particular case. But by then, it's too long of a time that a person has actually served behind bars. So we, by way of reforms, of course, that's one reform through the 26th Amendment, so that we can actually, we endeavored to ensure some reform within the institution as well, that would directly benefit the general public. However, at the same time, we've also worked on other pieces of legislation. So, for example, the Criminal Procedure Code of 1908, we've actively worked on that, and we have presented 108 amendments within the Criminal Procedure Code. And what that actually, just to sort of give you an overview or broader view on what those were for, or what they could achieve and have achieved, is basically the use of modern electronic devices whilst giving evidence, whether giving evidence through the electronic means. A witness doesn't have to then travel physically to the court, but they can give evidence or be cross-examined by a video link, the use of a video link facility or electronic device. Also, collection of evidence through these electronic devices, and also use of those of that evidence that's collected through these modern age or modern day devices for that to be used at trial. And of course, within the trial as well, we've set some certain timelines where a judge has to ensure, and this will be directly linked to their performance and review by the higher judiciary. Of course, these are courts. I'm talking about the courts of magistrates, the courts of the additional session judges, the court of the district and session judges, and of course, their performance is contingent upon these timelines, because obviously they can grant a one time. For example, they'll have to conduct a trial within a year. in X, type of a case. And then if they can do a one-time extension of that timeline by, certain months or certain weeks, and then they wouldn't be allowed to give a further extension. And of course, all of this data will be available to the senior judiciary that they are subordinate to, of course. And then their performance actually gets reviewed on the basis of that. So this is one way that we've tried to ensure installing timelines within the trial proceedings so that the trials are concluded in a timely manner, efficiently and efficaciously. So that's what we've done. Another mechanism that we've inserted. So just by way of an example, I've shared like these two examples with you that we worked on. And of course, we do have other legal reforms in sight and in place that we want to ensure, whether that's ensuring a right to legal aid for the destitute and the poor or the needy, those that actually cannot afford legal assistance or a lawyer. So we've worked through other organizations as well, the Legal Aid and Justice Authority. So we're working on a pilot project at this particular time with the inhabitants of Adiala Jail or the Rawalpindi District Jail authorities. Of course, we're trying to ensure that women and children that have been incarcerated or have been convicted or are under trial, and those that cannot actually be represented through a lawyer because they either do not have the financial means or they cannot afford a lawyer or they don't have access to a lawyer. So those reforms and those changes that we've been trying to ensure at the Ministry of Law and Justice. A lot is planned and we're rolling it out one after the other so as to ensure and also to reduce the workload of the courts as well. We've now obviously within certain types of cases, whether those are civil disputes or family disputes, we are giving preference to mediation and arbitration. So of course, we're trying to promote alternative dispute resolution as well, so that we can actually offset the burden of that's being faced by our judicial system, mainly by the courts and the judges. So we can try and reduce some of their burden by going for these alternative dispute resolution mechanisms.
So since last many months, we are listening that another constitutional amendment will be tabled before Parliament, but before tabling, government is trying to achieve a political consensus. So would you like to share some detail that is this being done? And if it is being done, so when we should expect this constitutional amendment, and anything important that you can highlight which is expected to come in this 27th constitutional amendment?
Right. So I think from the very beginning, I'd like to reiterate that right now at the Ministry of Law and Justice, or even otherwise, we do not have any proposal that is under consideration for the 27th Amendment. And the reason why I say this is because you remember that I was actually at the forefront of the 26th Amendment, and we've been working on these legal reforms, and we're still part of these legal reforms, and we've been working for a very long time. So we've actually not had any sort of proposal for consideration for the 27th Amendment. However, again, I'd like to state that it's the prerogative or the legal competence of the National Assembly and the Senate, the members there. So, of course, you have to understand that both the houses of Parliament, whether that's the Senate or the National Assembly, this being their legislative competence or their prerogative, of course, when they reach a broader consensus, which has not begun at this point in time, but of course, if because it's a government of allies. So if the allies and the leading party, which is obviously PMLN, my party, which we will then, if we think that there's certain changes that need to be made within the Constitution, or the Constitution needs updates, within the certain articles, then we can obviously bring them anytime once we've reached these a consensus. But of course, there is no talk on consensus or anything otherwise at this point in time. So what we're doing right now is we're not working on any sort of constitutional amendment, contrary to popular belief, if I might add. But whenever the parliament will start working on it, or the government will start working on it, you will find out. Of course, this is something that you cannot do in the middle of a night. Of course, you do have to take your allies on board, and of course, as you remember, what we had gone through in 26th Amendment. Of course, we had to get everybody to agree in terms of our allies. Of course, I'm speaking for allies at this particular time and this point in time. So our allies had to agree and be on board and supporting us for that constitutional amendment. So right now, we are not working on any constitutional amendment. We're just working on day-to-day legislative matters, bills that have been pending before various committees, and we're trying to ensure that we can get them passed and have that effective legislation, an updated legislation that attempts to address the ever-evolving situation or the needs of the citizens from time to time.
So there was another pressing issue, that relationship between two major coalition parties, PMLN and Pakistan People's Party. You might have seen in TV talk shows, in newspapers, in social media, that working relationship is not good. There is some friction. So how would you like to say, and would you confirm that today Prime Minister and the President, they were also expected to meet to discuss certain state matters?
Look, I am not privy to any meeting between the President, the Prime Minister. However, they do meet from time to time to discuss issues of mutual interest, as well as issues pertaining to the state affairs, or the affairs of the state, rather. And they do meet from time to time, and that's a healthy thing. That's a good thing, and they do meet. Of course, if they decided to meet and they couldn't meet, that's one thing, but I can neither confirm or deny if they were scheduled to meet today or not. However, at the same time, there is no rift, there is no issue between the two major coalition partners. Of course, our coalition partner, which is the biggest coalition partner that we have as part of the government, we do have issues or reservations that do crop up from time to time, and we do address them in a very timely and an effective manner. And we do address their reservations from time to time on various issues, whether that's pertaining to the budget, whether that's pertaining to legislation that's being introduced in the House, or any other issue of public importance. So we do take them on board, and we do discuss these issues with them. And bring them to light. We have obviously, of course, asked them. The Prime Minister has been very vocal about asking them to be part of the cabinet, but they've chosen not to. However, they did obviously become part of the government, and we are in the government with their support. Of course, you know that there are certain constitutional roles that their party personnel have assumed and are part of, and of course, that's how a coalition works. So we are in the government with their support. So whatever reservations that they have from time to time, we do try and clear those out.
So lastly, I would like to seek that 2025, half of the 2025 has already passed. So we are in the second half. What is the government agenda for second half for the welfare of the public? Any measures? It could be legal, you have already highlighted, economically, or in any other sector. Is government planning in the second half so that certain relief packages could be given for the common man? There could be some improvement in governance, structural reforms. There have been series of meetings, tax reforms you have been talking about. So in the second half of this current year, is any important agenda ahead that government would like to keep it up?
Well, I think so far, whatever has been done has been extremely important, whether that's the FBR reforms, tax reforms, like you referred, legal reforms, other, the right sizing and the downsizing
Exactly.
of various government departments. And of course, privatization. So, with all those public entities that the government was actually involved in doing business in, whether that's PIA, whether that's other various entities that need to be privatized. Of course, we are fast tracking those privatization processes so that we can actually not let the people of Pakistan suffer and let them, because obviously at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers' money. So you've got to be really mindful of the fact that if there are, various amounts that need to be paid for a public entity that is sitting idle or is not functioning properly, then of course you'd have to go for privatization. So of course, PI being one of them. We're also thinking of with other reforms as well. Especially you might have seen in the budget with the relief that has been, whatever little relief. I'm not debating this that if it wasn't a lot or it should have been a lot or it should, but within the limited resources and given the circumstances, of course, we had to work with what we had, and our hands, of course, were somewhat tied in that situation. So, given that we are in an IMF program, but we did provide relief to the common man, and this is our topmost priority and our main aim to provide relief to the general public in any shape or manner, and this is what we've been doing, and we will be introducing newer policies so as to make it beneficial for the common citizen, for those that are middle class or lower middle class population of Pakistan, so that we can uplift them from poverty or their economic uplift in general. So we have taken those measures, and we're still very much en route to taking these measures. And we are taking them one after the other. So that's what I can say. But definitely, we will have more, good initiatives that will be introduced by the government of Pakistan, whether that's in terms of foreign investment, where we've really made a mark for ourselves in terms of our diplomatic engagement that has been with the countries all over the world, especially after the 10th of May, the 9th and the 10th of May. Not just the morale of the Pakistani citizens or Pakistani people has been, of course, at its zenith or sky high, but also generally the image of the country has improved many folds. So, of course, we are working towards it, and we hope that the people of Pakistan will work with us in achieving that lost glory of Pakistan that we so want to restore.
A very precise question. Is government is worried about anti-government protest announced by a particular political party? Is government considering these protests as a big challenge? And if it is so, any strategy to deal with it?
Well, I think our strategy has been very clear throughout. We, of course, permit any protest that's within the constitution and the legal framework. And we do support that. Any government should support that. But if a protest, the
violent,
entire, not just violent, but of course, if the entire sort of idea behind a protest is to create a ruckus or to spread violence and not be having a peaceful assembly or peaceful protest, of course, then that just defeats the purpose of a legal right of having a peaceful protest or peaceful right to peaceful assembly. So, of course, we've seen time and again with the past precedents that we have before us that this particular party, that without naming that particular party, you and I, we both know well that there's a history behind it. And of course, even though when they try and claim that we didn't even break one plant, that's actually a false claim. We've seen what has unfolded on not just May 9th, which is a very unfortunate day, but also we've seen time and again, whether that's I think the first week of October, or even, the 26th of November, or even otherwise, if you see, there's been various protests. So this party has a long history or a proven track record that we've seen time and again, that they resort to violence, and resorting to violence under the garb or under the name of peaceful protests. Of course, that cannot be permitted. And if they try and do that and not adhere to the rules and regulations, the conditions that have been imposed on any protesters under the law, then of course that cannot be permitted by the government of the day.
Thank you so much indeed, Minister of State for Law and Justice, Barrister Mr. Aqeel Malik, who despite was very busy and attended our program straight from Senate session. Thank you once again. And dear viewers, till our next program, goodbye and Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you.